Today we're taking a look at an easy way of creating cinematic narrative AI animations. And I'll say this is a different method that I've been workshopping that isn't like the Corridor Crew anime video that was going around a little while ago. This does not involve shooting in front of a green screen and then like extracting 3,000 stills and then running them through a stylization filter. In fact, this method is wholly AI generated. And while I do say easy, it does take a little bit of elbow grease, but it doesn't require a whole lot of technical knowledge and focuses a lot on creativity. So let's take a look at a quick example. So pretty cool, right? We're going to take it up a step by adding in consistent characters, dialogue, lip sync, and a narrative. And I'll explain this whole process, showing what worked and most importantly, what didn't work. This whole thing took me about 2 days of experimenting to kind of lock down. I'm going to showcase a lot of the things that went right and a lot of the things that went wrong so that if you decide to try this out, you'll at least save yourself, 2 days of bashing your head into a wall. Okay, let's dive in. Okay, so I put together a 30-second little scene to demonstrate this workflow. Our tools are going to be Midjourney for our initial image output, Runway's Gen-2 for a first video pass, Murf.AI, which is going to be handling the character voices. Murf.AI is also sponsoring this video, so we'll talk about them more later on, but I just wanted to say thank you to them for sponsoring this video. From there, we'll be moving into an app called Reface, and then finally heading over to Kaiber.AI. I know it's pretty crazy. We're sort of ping-ponging all over the place. I'll explain everything as we chug along. Our scene itself, which was not written by ChatGPT, I mean, it's a 30-second scene, so I just did it myself, is the fairly standard trope of the washed-up private eye being hired by the femme fatale. But since this is all AI generated, let's throw some cyberpunk on top of it. All right, let's take a look at the scene.
It was a lousy day and an equally lousy night. When she walked in, I knew it wasn't going to get better.
Mr. Malloy, I've heard you're the best PI in town. At least when you're sober.
Caught me at a bad time, I'd say.
Well, I have something here that might sober you up.
Is this what I think it is?
It is. And I'm glad to know you'll be taking the case.
I would have said no. If I knew then, it would be my last.
So pretty cool, right? And listen, I will be the first to admit, yes, there are problem spots, and we're going to go over those in a little bit. But let's just take a hot second to kind of reflect on the fact that that was wholly AI generated. There were no actors, there was no set, there were no props, there was no camera. That whole thing was literally conjured out of nothing. We've come a very long way in a short amount of time. Let's not forget that just a few months ago, this was AI video. So we're getting somewhere pretty quick. All right, let's break this whole thing down. For this process, I kind of consider Midjourney to be our casting office and our storyboard department. Since this was just 2 characters in a room, I didn't go too crazy. The initial prompt for the character named Malloy in my head is the private detective Malloy. It's a very private eye name, is cinematic still, filmed by Ridley Scott, Blade Runner, private investigator, white shirt. Edward Norton I called out, even though he did not come out very Edward Norton-y, as Deckard, age 30, sits at his desk, night, close up. These were the initial 4 images. I actually ended up choosing this image, which again does not look very Ed Norton-y, nor does it really look cyberpunk-y. He actually kind of looks like an accountant that's just longingly waiting for a golf day to happen, but whatever, it worked. And then as an alternate, I also grabbed this one, which kind of looks like a young David Lynch to me, but both of them sort of worked. For our femme fatale, who in my headcanon was named Lana after the actress Lana Turner, I rolled up cinematic still, filmed by Ridley Scott, Blade Runner, femme fatale, black dress, Anne Hathaway I called out, even though again, she does not look like Anne Hathaway, stands in the doorway of a small private investigator's office. I mostly leaned on that first image. So I did like that sharp chromatic difference between the 2 shots, kind of that greenish hue with Malloy and a reddish background for Lana. I thought that that would create a nice dynamic between the 2. As a note, I did use Midjourney version 5.1 for this, the colorful, more imaginative version, as I thought that would help when we converted this all over to video. So after uprising these shots, let's take it all over to Gen-2. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time going over Gen-2. I actually have another video that I did fairly recently that was a deep dive on it that is linked below. But I'll say it is coming along. So taking our Malloy image and running it as an image prompt with the the prompt cinematic action, cyberpunk, a detective at his desk, turns to look at camera, and then giving the commands to interpolate and upscale results in, well, initially some kind of janky images. For example, our first one was this one where there's like a random dude sitting in the background. Another one which almost works, but he's lost the white shirt and is now wearing a jacket. Another one that I liked, but it has like 2 random office workers in the background. The trick I'm finding with Gen 2 is that it's going to take you a couple of rolls and iterations before you hone in on something that looks pretty good to you. But even that is probably still going to have some issues. But once you find something that you kind of like, to make sure you grab the seed and iterate from there. So ultimately, that last one plus the seed number got us here, which I liked. On the Lana front, I actually got really lucky and ended up with this on the first try, and it actually does appear in the final animation. That said, there were a lot of other ones that did not work. For example, this one, which looks really kind of surreal. Sort of cool, but definitely not what we're looking for. I did also like this shot a lot. As you can see, it's definitely a different character than that initial one, but we do have a solution on that coming up in just a second. So once I had collected a number of Malloy and Lana shots, I started crafting the dialogue in Murf. Once again, Murf.AI is sponsoring this video, and my thanks to them. So although we're mostly going to be looking at the AI voices in Murf, they do have a lot of other features in here, such as video aspects where you can sort of build a trainer or explainer video, where you could write your script to be narrated by someone. You can add media in, and even have stock photos and videos popped in. So let's just grab this, for example. Trim it, and then add it directly to your timeline, and there it is. Add more voices very easily as well, and then export the whole thing out. On the audio side, there's templates for creating an audiobook, a podcast, e-learning module. So yeah, there's a lot of different things that you can do with Murf. And yes, you can upload your own media as well. You can actually even import video in via URL from even YouTube. So pretty cool. Murf.AI is definitely worth checking out if you're looking for an AI voice generator, be it for a podcast, an audiobook, or a presentation. You can use it and download voices for free, and it's got some pretty cool tricks that I'm going to show you now that we're getting back to our story. So for the voices of Malloy and Lana, I ended up with the characters of Tyrell, which I thought was funny if you know your Blade Runner trivia. And for Lana, I used Samantha. So one of the things that I like about Murf is that you can control the style of read. For example, in this Samantha line, you can have her either read it in a conversational tone, where she sounds like this.
Well, I have something here that might sober you up.
Or in the luxury tone, which I ended up using here.
Well, I have something here that might sober you up.
Additionally, you have emphasis controls, which are kind of interesting, where you can raise or lower sort of the vocal pitch, because no one actually talks in a very flat, monotone sort of way. That's always kind of a weird thing with the AI voices. And this actually has some kind of cool controls for that. So let's try changing this to like something. Bring that down a little bit, and let's give that a shot and see how it sounds.
Well, I have something here that might sober you up.
Yeah, pretty cool, right? Additionally, I like the fact that you can add pause breaks in between lines, simply hovering your cursor there, add a pause, and you have various timings. And there also is an AI voice changer in which you can take an audio file of your voice or any other voice and change it into any one of the character voices. So we now have our voice and we have one of our Gen 2 outputs. Now, the problem with the Gen 2 output, of course, is that she is not speaking. So for this, we're going to take this video and pop it over to the Reface app. So for this, I'm taking my phone, swinging the Gen 2 footage over to it, and then coming in and hitting this swap face icon. We'll take our footage, which was here, I believe. Yes. And then choosing a face swap. So I previously generated a sort of Anne Hathaway lookalike, so we're going to use that face to swap onto here. So she's already labeled in, and all we have to do is hit swap face, give it a second while it does so, and we now have a consistent face that we can apply across all of our shots, which at least solves the problem of being able to have a consistent character. Now, there's still the problem that she's not talking, and for that, we head back over to Reface. Now, the trick here, because you can't import audio into the app, is that I would just hit this record button down here, and then I would just play the Murf audio kind of cranked up on my computer speakers, and then we'll sync them together later in editing. And with that, we now have her speaking.
Well, I have something here that might sober you up.
Now, the output coming out of Reface is like 640 by 480 or whatever it is. It's definitely low res, but that's okay because we're going to take everything and move it over into a Stylize pass by using Kaiber.AI, where we'll be able to up-res it. So this is probably the area that I learned the most and have the most that I want to pass on to you guys. Kaiber is a newer AI video generator that kind of blew up when it was used for the Linkin Park Meteora video. It definitely does some really cool things and overall kind of has that evolving hallucinogenic kind of stylized look to it. But I wanted to figure out a way to kind of tame that down for this and sort of make things more stylistic across the board. So if we take a look at just the straight Gen-2 to Reface output, we get something that looks like this. So there's our first image again, another talking image, Malloy at his desk. So you can see it's kind of inconsistent in terms of how things look. So I wanted to use Kaiber as a style overlay to create that kind of animated look for it. The additional bonus being that you can take this low res footage, import it into Kaiber, and then output it as 1080 or even 4K footage. What I found with Kaiber, at least in terms of transforming video footage, is that you pretty much want to stick to more or less the basic attributes of your character and then maybe add some kind of emotive direction to it. So for example, in this case, beautiful woman, red hair, black dress, and then sly, because she's sly. And then in this style of, you have a number of different presets that you can use. One of the ones that I wanted to try out was this Meteora watercolor. I did use graphic a lot for that last one. The other thing that I found that kind of helps tamper down that constantly evolving look is to negative prompt the style of. And negative prompting in Kaiber works by a parentheses and then a colon and then a number, I believe, below 1. 1 is sort of the default. So if we put 0.5, that effectively acts as a negative prompt. Once we kind of have a look here, we can go into video settings. This transform is actually what causes that sort of warping, hallucinogenic look. So we're going to turn that down to 1. So essentially it doesn't, and then hit preview frames. Once it's done, we have 4 different initial frames to begin with. I'm going to choose this one. And once we have that, we simply hit create video. And after about, I'd say, a minute, you have your final output, which looks really good. It has a little bit of that shifting quality, but it's not, overblown or super tripped out and weird. And what's nice is from here, you can upscale your video to either 1080 or 4K. So I did run into a problem with my production workflow, which is basically taking all of the footage and running it up to the lip sync point, and then running over to Kaiber and doing a pass on it there. The problem that I would run into is even with the same prompt, a lot of times the character or style would kind of change. Like this was a style that I really liked, but I couldn't replicate it. Sometimes it would end up looking like this. Other times it would end up looking like this. So ultimately, all of that got me thinking that there's a seed system happening within Kaiber. We just don't have access to it. So the idea to keep everything consistent across a character would be to take all of that character's scenes, string them out as sort of one video, and then run Kaiber as a pass on that. So essentially by running, say, all of the Malloy scenes back to back through Kaiber at the same time, it stayed consistent to that character. Similarly with Lana, taking all of her shots and stringing them together and then running them through Kaiber at the same time resulted in a consistent character. The added bonus as well is that I think it costs you less in credits to do it this way than individually trying to upload each one. At that point, it's just a matter of taking those individual shots and basically cutting them together, in which case we end up with, our full movie. So please do try this out. Take little bits and pieces, run it through a new tool, put a new spin on it, try out a new trick. I'd love to see what you guys come up with. Let's keep evolving this new medium of storytelling. I thank you for watching. My name is Tim.